The blue hour is an amazing time for photography. It comes just after the golden hour being when the sun is just above the horizon, everything is painted in this lovely golden, beautiful light. It's nice, but it's a bit of a cliche, it's a bit too easy. The blue hour is what comes immediately afterwards when the sun has gone down, there's no direct light hitting anything, and what you get is the opportunity to shoot some really moody frames, which particularly if you have something, for example, like a nice Gothic abandoned church, you're going to be able to produce some really cool looking frames. We want to do something a bit tricky, a bit more technical, and the blue hour is where that happens, particularly when you have something lovely and moody and Gothic, like this abandoned church, complete with that lovely bell right at the top of it there. The blue hour is the time to shoot this, I think. Good blue hour photography is about understanding how your camera works and where some of its manual settings are, because this is what the camera is pitching me here, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be an absolute pile of noise in there because it's going to try and set up an exposure that I can shoot handheld. But because I'm on a tripod, we don't care about that. So we'll hit Pro up at the top there, and here we get way more options for choosing exactly how we're going to set up our image. What I'm going to pick up first here is ISO. ISO is how sensitive my camera is to light hitting the sensor. I don't mind a long exposure here, so I'm going to set a much lower ISO than the camera would probably choose all by itself. And what that means is that as light hits the sensor, it takes the sensor a relatively long time to develop an image, and the effect that obviously has on shutter speeds, your shutter speed gets longer and longer as the ISO drops. So here if we hit S for shutter, I have this list of shutter speeds, and as I drag down the scale, the image gets brighter and brighter and brighter, overexposes, and as I come back up the scale, we start to see that colour coming back in until we're underexposed there. What I'm after is the classic kind of blue hour look, that kind of nice purpley sky is a real hallmark of this kind of genre, I suppose, of landscape photography. I think if we bring the exposure up a bit, we can get a bit more purple into the sky. The other thing that we want to make sure of is that when I push the shutter release on my camera phone, is to make sure that the act of me pushing the shutter release on the camera doesn't wobble everything around. So we'll tap this hamburger down here, and here I have 3 second, 5 second and 10 second exposures. 3 seconds sounds just perfect to me. And so from there, I like the composition. I nearly like the exposure, although I might just brighten it a shade. And then we're just going to get focused by tapping where the roof of the church meets the sky there, between a dark area and a light area behind, is a really good place to find accurate focus, particularly when the light's starting to get away from you. If you can find an area with a nice line between a dark area and a light area of your image, you're going to get accurate focus results pretty much every time. So I'm happy with that. We're going to hit the shutter, and with a nice dramatic countdown, and 3 seconds later, I think probably quite a cool looking shot. This frame is what the camera shot kind of all by itself in fully automatic mode, and you know what? It's pretty good. I think if you compared this to the output of a similar device 10 or 15 years ago, you would never get anything this serviceable. This is a really clean looking frame. I can see a few things about it that I don't particularly love. It's quite a bright exposure. I think we've prioritised exposing for the church there, so the sky doesn't have a huge amount of colour in it. And also, if I crop into the frame, if I zoom in, I can see there is quite a bit of noise lurking in these shadows, and I think that what has happened there is that the camera has boosted the ISO in order to give me a shutter speed that I can comfortably hand hold. But I'm on a tripod, so it doesn't matter about hand holding, and that's why we're going to be looking at pictures that have that longer shutter speed and hopefully a bit more punch to them. This frame is very underexposed, but do you know what? I quite like it, particularly this beautiful, rich, almost purple blue in the sky there. I think looks really, really nice. And the way that the underexposure has totally knocked out all of the detail of the foreground, I think there's loads of atmosphere in this frame, or there's loads of potential atmosphere, because I think that from here you actually can't really tell that it's a church. It's a building for sure, but I think that what this exposure would benefit from would be a bit more exploration to see if I could find an angle that made it look really, you know, a bit more imposing, a bit more church-like. So a promising start, but not my favourite. This is a really gorgeous photo, a nice example of blue hour photography. You've got lots of light and colour in the sky, these nice kind of peachy tones just where the sky is meeting the foreground here. And also the sandstone that the church is made from looks really warm to me. It's a nice kind of earthy textured image, I think. So the exposure, the colours here are really working for me. I like this little area of negative space as well. And because we're shooting at ISO 100, if I crop into this frame, I can see there's actually loads of detail in there. It's really quite stonkingly sharp, I think. So this is a frame that will not just look good on a camera phone screen, but I think will probably print really nicely too.